Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive as we're merging the brands around here. We've done a lot of sports, we've done a lot of politics, we've done a lot of Baltimore Positive, and now we are attempting to play the great game of baseball, including here in Baltimore, Maryland, where the Florida Marlins, Miami Marlins, the one-time Wayne Azenga and world champion Marlins, bringing the virus to the city. We'll see about that. This guy has been an Orioles fan all his life. He is a longtime baseball editor. He hosts something called Baseball Book Pod because editors actually read. And as we both have lamented many, many times, Justin McGuire, not enough people read in our society. But you are one of those folks, and much like all of us, and I guess it's been 6 months since I've talked to you, I did not do a lot of sports conversations during the beginning part of the pandemic because, quite frankly, it seemed a little small and petty and weird. It still seems that way watching empty baseball for no one. And this Marlins story from Sunday's an all-timer, though, isn't it? The kids all got together and decided, it's just a little plague. Let's go ahead and play a baseball game.
Well, yeah, the kids and the manager, Don Mattingly, who's no kid, should have known better. It's insane that they left it to the team to decide whether they were going to play after, I think at that point, there had been 4 players tested positive. It's like you said, it just doesn't make any sense. You can't play baseball during a pandemic and then leave decisions to players. It makes no sense. Baseball has to step in and have hard and fast rules for how they're going to handle these things, and it seems to me like they're making it up as they go along.
Well, we're all trying to fly the plane as we're going along, right? I mean, you're doing, before we even came on the air, you're in your real life, your son, high school, where you are, work, jobs, bills. I mean, I'm switching my brand because I don't really think sports is viable right now, and I'm not sure, and, onto the baseball side of things here, and, your background at Sporting News and baseball and where it was and what the Sporting News stood for, and I was Sporting News Radio and the Baseball Bible, and what they're trying to do here to stay relevant, right? Putting these baseball games on that are awful television. They really are. Like, I love baseball, and it's not very good to watch, and it's not compelling for 3 or 4 hours and wasn't over the weekend, and the bad teams are going to quit, and this virus that's already gotten a hold of one team that happens to be the next team we're playing, right? And the next team that went into that locker room happened to be the vaunted New York Yankees, right? And the Phillies now have clubhouse attendants that are in quarantine. This was a mistake, but there's so much money, and quite frankly, they don't know what else to do with themselves. They have to try to get this in, and now here comes the NFL on the backside of this with a full breathing contact sport, right?
Well, yeah, I was reading about this yesterday, and I was talking to somebody that I think the NFL and also I think college football are holding their breath as they look at MLB right now to see what happens. Because if MLB has to quit after a week or two and say we just can't make this work, I don't see how in the world the NFL can then turn around and say, yeah, well, we're going to do it in a sport like you said that involves even more contact, even more players. And then college football, to me, I don't see how you could possibly do that when very few campuses are even going to be, fully functioning this fall. So, like, I just saw another college today decided they're going all online. I just don't see how any of that's going to work. And like I said, I think baseball is being seen as something of a bellwether, and so far it's not good because I almost guarantee you the Marlins are not going to be the last team that has this kind of outbreak.
Well, the bubble factor for the NBA and the NHL and the pod system and watching what people... I mean, first things first, bro. You're in North Carolina. I'm in Maryland, right? Like, I drove down to the Outer Banks about 6 weeks ago with my wife, and I was mortified. You know what I mean? Like, literally, after 120 days of not leaving the house, and when I did, to go to the supermarket or to a sponsor to grab a pizza at Pizza John's with a mask on, and you go in the front door and out the side door, and nobody touches anybody, and I'm staying 6 feet away from everybody, that in different parts of the country, there's just been a completely different set of rules. I've watched these football players behave in Arizona and Florida and Texas. I watch their Instagrams. It looks like some of them don't even own a mask, right? So we go through all of this, and then we gather these people together. And I guess on the baseball side of things, I found it fascinating last week. At the times when the Angelos boys were kind enough to give me fake, awful summer league baseball with one outfielder last week. They interviewed Alex Cobb, and he's so well spoken. He seems like such a good guy, and he has some life experience, and his brother in Iraq and all this stuff. And they said to him, how's it been getting back and stuff? He's like, well, I got to be honest with you. I haven't talked to any of my teammates. I haven't been around any of my teammates. I haven't been around any of the position players at all. Like, I have not had a conversation with any of them. We've been here 4 days. We're really trying to avoid each other. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, that's baseball. I mean, and that, you can pitch without talking. I mean, hell, the guys come from Asia and don't speak the language, and they play they play full seasons with an interpreter and figuring it out. So communication, I'll hear all of that and hitting the cutoff man and all the stuff these grown-ups are supposed to do, including running a rundown, which I saw the other day, which is pretty obvious they didn't have spring training. But football's totally different, right, Justin? And I would think that coming together and saying it's okay to not communicate, but that's not the way we're built, right? And certainly it's not the way sports and camaraderie and any of this, it's ingrained in these guys to communicate and be together. I've never thought this was going to work. I've been very, very skeptical all summer long, and 4 days into this, I don't want to have the I gotcha part of this, but instinctively, the part of me that's done this for 35 years says there's just no way this is going to work.
After the Marlins news came out yesterday, when I think it was, 12 players and 2 coaches or something was the total that we heard yesterday morning, I tweeted out, I said, this is entirely predictable. And somebody answered me and they said, yeah, and predicted. And yeah, it's like you said, people like you and me have been saying that this doesn't really make any sense to try to do this at a time when numbers are spiking throughout much of the country. I mean, there are parts of the Northeast that have their numbers kind of under control, but so many big swaths of the country, including, Florida, like you said. I mean, Florida's numbers are horrific, and they have 2 Major League Baseball teams, and they have, a bunch of teams that are going to have to go into Florida and be playing regularly. And to try to do all this amidst that, it just doesn't make any sense. And the fact that 4 days in we had this was, like I said, it was entirely predictable. And I don't know. It looks like Major League Baseball is going to try to just play through it at this point. And I don't know what that means for the Marlins ultimately, or for the teams that have to play them, like the Orioles. But again, what's going to happen if in 2 or 3 days the Phillies have 12 guys test positive, or the Orioles have 14 guys test positive, and then you're 3 weeks into this and half the team, Major League Baseball teams have half their rosters out because of COVID. It's just I don't see how this is going to be viable for 2 more months and then playoffs. I just don't see how they're going to be able to do it.
Well, I've talked about the integrity of the whole thing, right? Like the fact that there would actually be a winner that we would celebrate if we get to that point. And I've talked about that with the NFL all summer long, which is, do you really think we're going to get to a Super Bowl in Tampa, even though my team's the best team? We were 14-2 last year. Do you really think we can get to the end of this by starting it, and at what cost, right? And the politics of this, and the fat orange guy that is using this as a way to try to get elected again and sending kids back to school. All of this sort of falls apart on a bus in Philadelphia with the Miami Marlins and 14 of these guys, where you say, all right, this is the first case of this. If baseball and football are the way we get back to work in this country, they've done a poor job of this, right? I mean, this is going to be something for the rest of society that we looked at and say that failed. And psychologically, it's probably not good, especially for the people that still revere baseball in that way and think the country revolves around that.
Well, yeah, like you said, it's kind of I think it is kind of something people are looking at as a weather vane for how we're going to be able to get back to normal. And I personally, like I said, I have a son. I don't feel comfortable sending him back to school, and and the kind of contact he's going to have with people on a daily basis in school. And baseball is showing us why that is. This thing is extremely contagious if you come in contact with other people who have it, and unless you're constantly staying 6 feet away from them and constantly wearing masks, there's a good chance you're going to get it if somebody else in the room has it. And baseball is showing that. And I think, we know that the society basically shut down when one NBA player tested positive for this back in March, right? And now we have, a team that has half of its roster testing, and we're just pretending we can play through it. I don't see how it's possible to do this long term. I don't think it's viable, and I think baseball, along with a lot of other aspects of society, is kidding itself into thinking that this thing is under control in some way. It's not. And until we get a vaccine, I just don't see how we're going to be able to do this.
Justin McGuire is our guest. He is a frequent guest around here. You can find him at Baseball Book Pod as well as at J McGuire MLB. There is a beer, a glove, and a ball on his Twitter, as well as his vote mask, which I second that. And from the Oriole perspective, and from the Oriole fan in you and the Major League Baseball fan in you, as far as how this organization, and look, the last time you and I got together was in March before the pandemic. We were talking about the Astros cheating and Elias and Meidel and what the Red Sox role in all of this was, and how Manfred was going to be heavy-handed with handing down this or that, and Altuve wearing a wire. All that's kind of gone away. And the Orioles have been quiet. The Orioles are one of the teams that probably would have preferred not to play, right? There's no upside for them. They're not going to win a championship. But the minor league part of this and the industry part of this, and Justin, I told you I drove down to the Outer Banks. I drove on the way down on Route 301 out of Baltimore, which took me through Bowie, Norfolk, and back across the Hampton, the Norfolk Bridge, into the Eastern Shore. I went through Salisbury. So I went through 3 Oriole minor league towns that have no baseball this summer, what they're trying to do to minor league baseball all the way around with baseball and all these changes. And baseball's been so slow, glacially slow to change anything, including the DH for 47 years, right? But this is their time to create massive change and try to grow the game again in a way that the silver-haired guys like you and me aren't the only ones that care about it. Now the game is sort of shut down. They're going to endure tremendous embarrassment, to your point, right? Like, as long as they're going to try to put this charade on the next couple of weeks, there's going to be embarrassments, including some winner at the end if they can ever get to that point. That's not a real winner. Players are going to opt out. They're going to decide to not play. Teams are going to be decimated next month when they're 15 games under 500, and guys are just going to say, I'm going home. My ankle hurts. I'm Roger Dorn. All of that's going to happen, and they're trying to grow the game. You and I have been trying to grow the game all of our lives. We're the few people that love baseball. You've dedicated your life and your livelihood to it. I dedicated my life and my livelihood. They took my press pass 15 years ago here. I've got a team here. Nobody is even sure who's running it, right? We know what they're fielding Tommy Malone on opening day is a joke, right? Chris Davis is still running around out there trying to hit the baseball. All that's going on, and yet where is this going to be in 3 or 4 or 5 years for the industry of baseball whenever you take your vote mask off and we can shake hands and get a beer together in Asheville? Man, baseball feels so wayward in all of this, and I'm in a town where it really, really mattered at one point, and they really don't have any. You talked about like a weather vane. I don't even see them sticking the head out of the door at Camden Yards to say, we're here long term. Matter of fact, the longer the silence in the 29th year of a 30-year lease continues, and I hear about minority ownership in Nashville, Portland, man, there are places quietly sort of loading up on the backside of this thing to come skim themselves, the Tampa Rays or the Oakland A's, or the Baltimore Orioles, maybe, and I am still gravely concerned about the future of the industry and then this franchise that you and I have loved all of our lives.
Yeah, there's a lot there, but the one thing you touched on that I think is really concerning to me is it's clear that organized baseball has been making an attempt to get rid of a lot of the lower-level minor league affiliates, and they had that whole plan before all this started. And now that we have a year without minor league baseball, it's going to be used, I think, as an excuse to get rid of a lot of, rookie league and single A type teams throughout the country. And I think that's a huge mistake. It's, typical baseball, thinking about short-term costs of running minor league teams versus the long run benefits of having all these teams. Because you talk about growing the game to kids. Go to a minor league game, and what you see is tons of families, tons of kids, right? I mean, I go to a lot of minor league games in the course of a typical summer, and it really is it's affordable family entertainment in a way that Major League Baseball isn't, and certainly NFL isn't, or NBA isn't. And it's a way to get people interested in baseball and get families interested in baseball in a very cost-efficient way. And I think that baseball is making a huge mistake in not recognizing what they have. No other sport has that way of kind of getting smaller communities into their sport. And it's just the thinking is just, it doesn't make any sense to me. Again, it's all about the short-term costs as opposed to the long-term benefits you're getting from it. And in terms of the Orioles, I think this is a weird year for them. Like you said, this was a year that they had no intention of being good, right? This was a team that they by design was going to be terrible. And I think big part of that is that they wanted to get that number one draft pick next year, or at least a high draft pick next year. And that's going to be kind of weird to see too. If they don't complete this season, how are they going to actually allocate draft picks next year? Because
especially when they're playing 667 ball.
Exactly. If they keep this up. Well, the thing is, even a team as bad as the Orioles, in a 60-game season, they could fluke into 25 and 35, right, and get the 12th pick in the draft rather than the second pick or something. And that, honestly, is not what Mike Elias wants. I'm sure he would never tell you this, but he wants to get one of those high picks and build up the farm system, because they don't have the talent in the farm system that they'd like. It's gotten better in the last two drafts, and things are heading in the right direction, I think, in terms of the minor league talent, but it's not there yet. And they certainly, I think, we're planning to have another draft or two with a very high pick to build up that talent. So if the draft gets screwed next year, I don't know what the Orioles and the Tigers and teams like that sort of had this plan in place to not be very good in 2020. And the other thing we touched on too is the minor leagues. The fact that the minor leagues aren't playing is bad for teams like the Orioles, because you don't have a chance to have guys like Adley Rutschman, Grayson Rodriguez, DL Hall, your top prospects. They're not going to play all year. They're not going to be playing competitive baseball, and it's a development year they're going to miss, which is, it's bad for every team, but it's certainly a team that's in rebuild mode like they are. This is not what they wanted.
Justin McGuire does all things baseball and has done it for a living for a long, long time. He's at Baseball Book Pod. You can follow him at J McGuire MLB. Where's your Orioles fandom in all of this? You got a Brooks jersey in the closet down there? Or what do you got going on?
Oh yeah, I have actually just bought a Brooks Robinson bobblehead. The one they gave away at the stadium last year. I didn't get a chance to get this on eBay. I do have a Brooks Robinson jersey hanging in my office, and Cal Ripken poster from when he broke Lou Gehrig's record hanging in my office. So I mentioned I have a son, and he has unfortunately become an Orioles fan as well.
Oh boy!
So that has actually that has kept me maybe more interested in the team than I would be for this kind of, this stretch of the last few seasons when it's been horrible. He's really into it. He's really paying attention to the minor leagues and the prospects, and he watches all the games even when he knows they're not going to be very good. And,
so it was pretty good for you, right? Because you were distanced, but the years they were decent, 12, 14, 16, those years, right? He was like a kid, right? He was like 10, 11, 12, 13. So
yeah, exactly.
So he thought the Orioles were like on a par with the Yankees and the Red Sox for a minute.
Yeah, he when he was really getting into baseball at ages 9, 10, 11, 12, the Orioles were pretty good in those years. They were competing, and they won the division once. They won a couple of wild cards. And were generally okay in the other years. So yeah, it was fortunate for him that he did get a chance to experience some winning baseball for a few years there, and it's kind of, I think, helped sustain him. He's also, I gotta say, he's a Charlotte Hornets fan, so he's used to losing. He is not a spoiled fan, I'll say that.
Well, it's always great to catch up with you, man. I wish it was better times, and we're talking batting averages and pennant races and trading deadlines, and, just all of that stuff. And, I say this to my wife all the time. I've been doing this almost 30 years. I mean, it'll be 29 years in December, and I've had all of these seasons, right? Like I was on the radio when we had the strike back in '94, and, I was on the radio before the Ravens were here, and when we lost expansion, and, when the Terps won championships and lost them, and the Ravens in the playoffs. This has been the weirdest 6 months to think about what sports is going to be, but I think baseball has the hardest road ahead to try to figure this out because of the amount of games, the amount of history, the amount of weight, all of it, and the fact that it's so obviously sort of dying and they're in some sort of denial about it, and it doesn't feel to me like there's any real leader, not Rob Manfred, anyone, that there's any sharp, sane, forward-thinking voice for the sport. And that really, really worries me. I don't hear anyone. Remember 25 years ago when Bob Costas was writing books and, sort of like being the commissioner of conscience for baseball and all of that? I don't even see that sort of George Will sort of. I don't see anybody making sense of how these shifts are wrecking the game, all of it, just how the game's not very good, and they're sort of fooling themselves, because they're not fooling people in Baltimore. I walk the streets here every day. My last name's Aparicio. I really do worry about where the sport's going and where the future of this woebegone group is going, and watching the Nationals fly a championship flag down there, and knowing whenever coronavirus is over, they're going to have better players. They're going to have more money. They're going to have all of that a year, 2, 3 years from now. And what the Orioles are going to try to do to, I don't know, bring value to that Brooks Robinson jersey in your closet and make something here that makes your boy want to drive from Asheville up here to see a game 5 years from now,
Well, I've told you, I think we've had this discussion a few times, but I do have confidence, at least, at least somewhat confidence, limited confidence, but in Mike Elias and what he's got planned here. I do think for the first time in a long time, the Orioles actually do have a plan in place for getting better. For many years, they were, we talked earlier about baseball making it up as they went along in the pandemic. That's what the Orioles were, for many, many years. They were just making it up as they went along. There was no long-term plan, and we mentioned they became good in 2012 and were good for a few years.
I was going to go through all the obvious clues.
Fluke.
Was I going to say, wait, was it Jimenez, or was it Chris Benson, or was it David Segui, or was it Chris What gave you the clue that they didn't know what they were, or not signing Machado early on? All of that, right? Like literally.
Right. And I think right now, like, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but Elias has a plan that he's following that they did with the Astros, and all jokes aside about trash cans and everything, the plan in terms of player development was pretty clear in Houston. They were going to sacrifice a few years at the major league level and just accept the fact that they were going to be terrible while they were developing the minor league system, both domestically and internationally. And I think that's what he's trying to do. And I think the unsung story of the Orioles right now is that they really are, for the first time in years, paying real attention to the international market and making inroads there. And that's something that's not going to pay off immediately, but in 5, 6, 7 years it might, if they do it right. So the only thing I can say to Orioles fans right now is you got to be patient. And I know it's not easy because this team hasn't given you a lot to chat about for a long time, but I think that's the key, is you got to be patient and let this plan develop over the next few years, and hopefully it works out.
Well, you can also just, go away until they come back and, decide that they want you back, which is what a lot of people here are doing. And they turn their lonely eyes to the Ravens and to the Terps and other things that may or may not be playing anytime soon. Hey, man, take care of your family down there. Wash your hands. Wear a mask. Watch all this baseball. I feel like it's a limited time offer. Catch it now. It might not be here next week, and we'll send everybody out. Have you read any good baseball? I mean, that's one thing that doesn't take a time off. I want to give you a chance to promote your book pod because, I mean, you are in a unique space there because baseball has, for all of our lives, at least provided some pretty good writing and good storytelling. Yeah,
it's been actually a fantastic year for baseball books. There's been several that I've really liked, and I don't want to. I'll mention a couple that I thought were really good. Mitchell Nathanson, an author who's in Philadelphia, wrote a biography of Jim Bouton that was exceptional, very, very good, and I'd highly recommend that. And then there was a book called The Wax Pack, which was about a guy. He bought a pack of 1986 Topps cards, baseball cards, in like 10 years ago, 8 years ago, or something like that. And then he took the pack and he went and tracked down all the players in the pack and wrote about what they're doing now. And it sort of writes about his road trip and trying to find these guys. It's really interesting.
I had Brad on the show. He's a wonderful guy and a incredible archivist. And really, I'm going to have him back on because that book's done really well. That's been sort of the book of the season amongst baseball people, right?
It's gotten a ton of attention, and like I said, to me, that and Bouton are the ones that are probably, in my mind, the top ones this year. But there have been several other good ones, and I've had a lot of these guys on my podcast, a lot of these women, too. That there's a lot of women writing baseball now, too, which is a good thing. So it's actually been an incredible year for baseball books. Terrible year for baseball, great year for baseball books. And I was joking online the other day, but it's true. Someday in the next few years, somebody's going to write a great book about the 2020 baseball season and all things involved with that. It's like, it's been terrible to witness in real time, but I think it'll be a fascinating book to look at in retrospect.
I'm going to put Kepner on that, put him to work on that. Hey, man, always a pleasure, and I wish we had more relevant baseball to talk about, and I wish we had other things other than pandemics to discuss, but I'm glad you're safe, glad you're doing well. Send everybody out to follow Justin McGuire at J McGuire MLB, also Baseball Book Pod, which is an awesome little Twitter thing here. I love the way you've taken all the covers and made it your Twitter. I see Summer 68 there. Tim Wendell was on last week, and I see Dynastic Bombastic about Charlie Finley. We had him on. So, yeah, baseball, man, it warms my heart, even when they're not playing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Take care of yourself, Justin. Be well, all right?
All right, you too. Talk to you later.
Justin McGuire, a longtime Sporting News baseball editor, now doing baseball book pods as well as tweeting down in Asheville and drinking good beer, too. Asheville, North Carolina. Follow him out on Twitter. You can follow me at Baltimore Positive as well as at WNST.net. We're merging the brands, even though it says WNST here. I'm wearing out the classic logo. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat. Big thanks to my friends at Raskin Global, Leonard Raskin. I'm wearing the shirt on the set and the Planet Fitness. I got my koozie out. It's Chicken Palooza going on right now. Make sure you're getting your $5 boxes of chicken of Royal Farms and you gas up as well. Get your ROFO rewards card. You get chicken for free. That's the way to do it. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Baltimore Positive. We're here for you.